Donnelly. We're here at World Headquarters for Campbell Soup Company, and as part of Earth Week, we are bringing events to employees to help them better understand some of the environmental practices that they can do at home, but also that we do here at work. So today we are looking at food waste and how we can compost it. We've invited John from the Center for Environmental Transformation to tell us a little bit more about composting and how you can do it at home.
Alright, so hi everyone, my name is John. I'm the urban farmer at the Center for Environmental Transformation in South Camden. We are a multifaceted organization that has several large gardens with youth programs. We grow food and distribute it to the local residents. We have a farmer's market. We sell to restaurants. We have a 24-bed retreat center for groups to come and visit Camden and have service learning experiences. And we also host groups of volunteers. We have a ongoing relationship with your company, Campbell's, that helped fund and build 66 raised beds for one of our larger gardens last year, which has been a huge help. We've had groups of your employees come in the past, and we'd love to have more in the future. So I have a handout here about compost, which if maybe Melissa, you could pass those out for me. On the back side, there's some information about our organization if you'd like to visit the website or come to one of our volunteer days. And then on the other side is a really useful, simple description of basic composting. So we compost at our farm. It's an important part of what we do. Composting has been done for thousands of years in agriculture. And prior to modern agriculture, it was one of the only ways to provide nutrition to your plants. It's an incredibly complex topic in a lot of ways. You can actually apparently earn a degree in composting in some schools in Europe. As I found out, I've read several books about composting, but what I'll present is like the most basic form that anyone can do without getting confused. And then if you're interested, you can build from there. Really what composting is it's mimicking the forest floor. So if you've ever gone hiking or through a walk through the forest, there's like this very fine brown rich layer on the surface of the forest, and this is from the leaves that have fallen off the trees, and then they've started to decompose over time. And this process can take several years to complete, and that's why the trees can be supported and grow without anybody going around and spraying fertilizer in the forest. It's self-supporting. So we try to mimic that, but speed up the process so we don't have to wait quite as long for that to occur. So what you need for composting, really, you don't need to start out with anything at all. If you live in like a rural location and you don't care what your backyard looks like, which may or may not be your situation, you can just make a huge heap in your yard and then not pay any attention to it at all, and then eventually it will break down. And the ingredients that you're going to use are greens, which look like this, and browns, which look like this. So there's a good list on your handout of examples of greens and browns that typically homeowners will have available to them. So in our region, the most abundant brown is going to be leaves. So you can save your own leaves, you can collect leaves from other people's yards that they put out in bags, and you can save them to use in your compost pile. So if you want things to be a little bit more tidy than just having an open pile, then you can have it enclosed in some sort of wire circular thing that you can make. You can build some containers that are three-sided out of wood. You can purchase kits that are already pre-made. You can set up 3 pallets in a U-shape. You can do like we did and spend hundreds of dollars on cedars and build really nice looking compost bins. And what you'll do is you'll take some brown material and you'll add that. Hopefully this doesn't blow away. You'll add that inside your container, and then you're going to take some of your greens. And good examples of greens are clippings from your lawn, or those are kind of big. Weeds are actually fine to put in there, so if you weed your garden, you can throw those in your compost pile. And kitchen waste also is a green. And then one more green that's really useful that most people wouldn't think of is coffee grounds. So even though they're not the color green, they're considered a green. So you can make it kind of like a lasagna. As you have material, you just add it to the pile, and then so you got some greens on there. You want to keep your greens kind of covered, so then you add another layer of browns. So it's like a yard waste lasagna, and you keep building it up until this container is somewhat full, and then you want to let it sit. You don't want to add any more to this pile, and then you can start building a new pile somewhere else. And then as this starts to decompose, it's going to heat up, and all these living things are going to start to break it down. It's going to be bacteria, fungi, little tiny guys like little spiders and worms, and they'll start munching on the components. It's going to get hot. It'll start to break down. And then the next thing that you can do, you can be lazy and not do anything and just wait. But if you want to speed up the process, you can turn it. So then you just take the contents of this bin with like a fork or a shovel, and then you just turn it into a bin next to it. And that is going to introduce air, and it's going to mix the contents, and then it'll break down faster. So the two components are greens and browns. Two more components are water and time. So the fastest possible method for composting, if you're like really into it and you get your ratios just right, and you flip your pile and you water your pile to make sure the moisture content is good, is 18 days. That's called the Berkeley method. But if you're a little more lazy like I am, then you don't worry about how many days it's going to take. And when you have time, you can turn it. And if you have a composting thermometer, you can measure the temperature. It might get up to 150 degrees. It's pretty hot. That's so hot that if you put your hand in there, you'll feel like you want to take it out right away. And if it's not heating up, the pile will take much, much longer to break down. But that's okay. You have time. Okay, so that's a method that I would use if you have a little bit of space. Other methods you can use if you don't have a yard, if you live in an apartment, you still want to compost, maybe you still have some plants. Another really good way to compost is with worms. It's called vermicomposting. So you buy a container of worms, and the ingredients for that are food scraps and shredded paper. And then you just add the worms to that, and they love living in that environment. They'll break it down into this really beautiful, rich, very nutritious worm. They're called worm castings. And there's something called a worm tower that you can buy or make yourself, and it's basically containers that stack on top of each other. So you add your food waste in here with the worms. They break that down for a while, it gets full. You add your next container on top of that, which has holes in the bottom. And then you start adding new scraps in here. When the worms are done feeding in the bottom, they crawl up through the holes and start eating here. And then you add another one, and so on. And then, as the worms crawl up to the upper levels, you can take out the bottom one and then use that on your garden. So that's really easy, very good if you don't have yard space. We use both methods at our farm.
Does that get hot like the other method?
No, that method doesn't get hot. If it gets hot, then it'll kill the worms. So this is something that's great for indoors or like a shady area. I convinced my mom to start doing it. She does it. So that's like a pretty easy method also.
How big are the holes at the bottom of your container? Like if you were to use like cat litter boxes or something like that?
It's worm sized. Okay. So like quarter inch holes. You can just drill a whole bunch of quarter-inch holes. They also sell containers that are stacked up that have like a little drain on the bottom, because they also make a liquid. Your food has a lot of liquid in it. So the liquid part is called worm tea. after the worms eat it, and you like open up this little spout that looks like you get like Gatorade or something out of it, but it's worm tea, and you can use that for fertilizer. Yeah, so you might have noticed these are kind of small. It's like if you've seen Zoolander, this is like the composting for ants. So your composting pile would need to be much larger, like at least, some people say 4 feet, a 4-foot cube is a good size. That'll get nice and hot. But you can do it a little bit smaller. Our bins are 3-foot cubes, and if you go smaller, it'll just take longer because it doesn't get as hot.
Do you have to, with the open ones, you have to worry about like rodents?
Yeah, so on your list, so I forgot to say this. What can you compost? You can compost, the first answer is you can compost anything that was once alive. Anything. So any living thing can be composted. However, some ingredients are like, you need a little bit more of an expert level to deal with them. And so for like a first time composting or backyard composting, there's certain things you should avoid. Mostly cooked food. A lot of times there's like, you use oils and things in the cooked food, especially the oils, like they attract pests, and any animal products can also attract pests. Everything else is fair game. Eggshells are also okay. And some people buy ingredients to add to their compost because they want it, like, once you start composting, then you make a product that is, it's something good for plants, but it might not be great for plants. It's like there's different levels to composting. If you are really particular about having very healthy vegetables, then it's a learning process to make your compost better and better. And so then you get more like finicky about ingredients, like I'm becoming more finicky about ingredients. But just to make basic compost, greens and browns, that's really all you need to start with. So yeah.
You say bye.
So thanks for paying attention. I'd like to invite you, if you'd like to come and volunteer at our organization at CFET in South Camden, we'd be happy to have you. We have a Saturday volunteer day, the first Saturday of every month, pretty much. So the next volunteer Saturday is May the 6th, I believe. So we have garden activities, weeding, composting, planting things, helping to clean up our orchards, and we're happy to have you come and check it out. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully you can take some of these ideas and bring them home with you and learn to compost at home. And for employees here on campus, you might not know this, but we actually compost all of our food waste in the cafeteria. So